Let's talk about Kadarius Toney very surprisingly back, trolling Giants fans on social media after New York got smoked by the Cowboys. Andy Reid weighing in about the wide receiver room and the drops on Thursday, as well as talk about Chris Jones getting a deal done, though not maybe the deal we were expecting. So let's talk about it. But first, how about those? All right, first up, Adam Schefter spoke today on the Pat McAfee show about the Chiefs and Chris Jones' situation and where things are most likely at in the midst of contract negotiations during his holdout. He goes on to say that the day that Nick Bosa and the 49ers got a deal done, Schefter was told from both sides that there are, quote, huge gaps from a numbers perspective. However, a deal got done 6 hours later. And the point he was making is it doesn't really matter what anyone is saying because Chris Jones and the Chiefs can get this deal done quickly if they want to, whether it's today, tomorrow, next week, or next month. But can it be today or tomorrow, please? Because that sounds way better than next week and definitely better than next month. Well, after recording this segment, it was as if somebody was listening to me when I said, can it please be today? Because at about 4:20 p.m. Central Time, it was announced pretty much everywhere, maybe by Adam Schefter first, that Chris Jones and the Chiefs did reach a new deal. Now, it's just a one-year deal, basically with multiple incentives built into this year's contract to earn the large raise he wanted when the negotiations started. The Katz brothers confirmed, and Adam Schefter spoke on it as well. The Chiefs then released a statement online. Brett Veach had this to say: Chris is an elite player in this league, and over the last 7 years, he's really developed into a leader on our team. He's been instrumental to our success and Super Bowl championship runs, and it was a priority for us to keep him in a Chiefs uniform. I'd like to thank Chris and his representation, Michael and Jason Katz, for their desire and patience to get this done. Through this process, two things are obvious. Chris wanted to be a Chief, and the Katz brothers worked diligently on his behalf. In my opinion, that is a lot of word fluff, a word fluff sandwich, but either way, the deal got done. Again, it's only a one-year deal, with Adam Schefter noting that Chris does indeed still have 1 year left on his contract with the Chiefs. No new years were added to the contract, but he received multiple incentives to earn considerably more money this season per sources. And I got to see what the heck they are, because this man held out, lost over $2 million before sitting out Thursday's game against the Lions, which I think means he's missed over $3 million so far. So hopefully the incentives are well above that, or at least what he missed out sitting out on. Not the conclusion I expected them to come to. I thought it would be a multi-year deal, maybe 2-3 years. But hey, after this season, I guess the Chiefs could try to tag him and trade him. They could try to work out another long-term deal. There's a bunch of options that could go on from here. Not going to spend too much time speculating what that could be, but for now, the Chiefs and Chris Jones did get the deal done. It is reported that Chris Jones should be reporting back to practice this week, and we will more than likely see him week 2 against the Jags, which is great freaking news. And with all that being said, what do you think about the Chiefs and Chris Jones reaching a new 1-year deal? It's not even an additional year, just incentives built into this year's contract. So let me know your thoughts on all that in the comments down below. Next up, Kadarius Toney is back, dropping nearly as many troll posts as he did passes in the Chiefs versus Lions game. And of course, you know it has to do with the Giants and their fan base after they got the brakes beat off them 40-0 on Sunday Night Football against the Cowboys. So let's talk about it. But first, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Underdog Fantasy, the best and easiest place to play fantasy sports. And right now, Underdog is running a new sign-up promo where they will not only match your first deposit using code HBTC of up to $100 per usual, but they are also going to give out a mystery pick'em special in the pick'em lobby for you to use right from the start. And it's worth mentioning that the special pick is going to be 0.5 total yards, so the player only has to get 1 yard for your higher selection to be right. And how pick'em works is you can choose between 2 and 5 players to win up to 20x on your money by picking higher or lower on those players' stats. And if you aren't super confident, you can always turn on pick'em insurance, which gives you a little wiggle room on your entries. On top of that, you can now also participate in their new fantasy game called In-Game Pick'em, which allows you to make picks throughout the game. Player projections update in real time as in-game events occur. And finally, the start of the game isn't the end of making picks. So head on over to the Underdog website or app and use code HBTC at sign up to get your first deposit of up to $100 matched, as well as a mystery pick'em to use in the pick'em lobby. Anyway, back to to Kadarius Toney trolling the Giants and their fan base. Yeah, it was a horrible game. The Giants played terrible and the Cowboys went freaking crazy out there. And during this brutal beatdown, Kadarius Toney took the opportunity to take some shots at the Giants and their fans on his IG stories. He first shared this graphic of the Giants looking lost out there saying, "Nah, don't get quiet now." Then followed up with this graphic after the game was over saying, "Giants fans last night." Now, that's all he had to say on Sunday evening, but of course those posts went wild with everybody everywhere talking about them to a mixed bag of responses. Some of course said, "Hey bro, you had the worst graded wide receiver performance of any receiver since 2018 per PFF. Please focus more on catching passes rather than posting on social media." I saw some others say that Toney probably dropped his phone at least twice posting these, and then some were on the other side of the argument as well saying, "Nah, the Giants got smoked and Toney is just firing back after New York fans talk so much ish immediately following the Chiefs' L." But Toney wasn't done there, because earlier today he followed up with one last story post on Instagram that had this graphic which read, "Sorry, we're closed," and typed out this message. "And now I'm back off this ish again. Leave me the F alone, but stay tuned. Cat emoji," which you can interpret to mean whatever you want, but I think it's a vulgar term associated with pussycats, and I'll just leave it at that. But before I move on here, I personally do think it's best if Toney just stays off of social media right now, especially after such a poor performance on Thursday. However, I do think he can bounce back from this as early as next week and start to go off. Please, but I definitely need to see it. Talk matters not when you don't perform out there on the field after all. Andy Reid also said in his presser today he wasn't aware Toney was talking online, actually asking the reporters if this was a recent event, and when they confirmed that it was, Andy noted that if he perceives things like that to be an issue, he will go and talk to them about it. So will he? Who knows? Though, if I had to guess, I think Andy Reid did talk with Toney a few weeks ago when he deactivated his Twitter/X account back around August 15th, 16th, 17th, somewhere around there, which is why it's so funny to me that all these news outlets were acting like Toney recently deleted his Twitter because he couldn't handle the blowback from his performance after the Lions game. But from what I know and understand, it's been deactivated for weeks now. So nice try. Anyway, on the subject of the receivers, coach said he feels good about the room that they have and is confident they will get the drop issues taken care of. When asked about Kadarius Toney and his drops, Andy Reid took the blame for it. I mean, he's very good at doing this. He takes the blame. He's the head coach. I get it. But he said Toney missed all of training camp and preseason. And even though he really just got back to working the week prior to the matchup with the Lions, he felt it was important to get Toney back out there and caught up with real game speed, quote, "But I probably put him in bad positions, in primary positions, especially later in the game. You know, he's still getting his legs back and all that." So again, Big Red felt it was important for Toney to be out there, but said he could have better set him up for success and maybe not had him the primary receiver on some of those plays. He's confident, though, that we will all see better from KT down the road. Quote, "As much as we think Toney is a seasoned veteran, he hasn't really played a lot," which to me says that even though drops aren't a normal thing from Toney, Andy is still working him in ASAP to get more real game experience under his belt. Coach did say he's talked with Toney a couple of times since the conclusion of the game, and again, thinks it will indeed be better going forward. Big Red noted that the routes were good for the most part from the receiving room as a whole in that game, but the crossing route was indeed goofed up between Richie James and Kadarius Toney, resulting in that incompletion, but there were a lot of positives overall. He said the same about the defense as well. There were some definite positives, but also there are things that need cleaned up. He mentioned there was a 3rd and 12 that got them, but didn't seem overly concerned. And then on special teams, the fake punt got them. So again, there's plenty to improve on, but special teams had a pretty good night overall. Basically, all the way around. Good things, bad things to work on, but at the end of the day, coach said they were put in position to go win the game after the defense stopped the Lions on 4th down and they did not capitalize on the opportunity. So on top of that, the short yardage issues and the lack of a run threat, Mahomes was the leading rusher by far on the night. Coach said he's looking to improve there. Quote, "We got to clean some things up, but we'll get that taken care of. It's a good group up front and he trusts in them in that regard." He also touched on Juwan Taylor being quick off the line and says it's something that Taylor prides himself in, but you can't be too quick out there and chance a false start. And I know after the conclusion of that game, many were basically calling for Juwan Taylor's head because he was false starting every play and the refs weren't calling it. So of course the Chiefs are paying the refs. I don't know, there's a bunch of sensitive individuals that believe the moon landing was fake, but in all reality, if it's a penalty, The refs just need to flag it, and tackles all over the NFL will stop doing it. And that's all I really got to say on that subject. Next up, there were many out there saying that the Chiefs missed Eric Bieniemy, and the poor play calling in the Lions game was clearly an issue with Matt Nagy. And I think it's a bit too early to come to such a dramatic conclusion, especially considering the fact that Andy Reid runs this offense. Therefore, I personally need to see a couple more games to allow for a larger sample size to reach any sort of conclusion like that, though I think it's going to be hard to tell considering Andy Reid is the offensive genius here in KC, and that doesn't really change regardless of who the offensive coordinator is. Anyway, I lay out all that context because Andy was asked about Matt Nagy in his presser today and how he felt the first game went with Nagy back as the OC, and Andy answered saying, quote, "We had great communication. That's how we go about it, just as if EB was there." He said that part went relatively smooth and didn't have any problems with Nagy in the play calling process. So, with all that being said, do you think the Chiefs miss Eric Bieniemy as the OC already? Like, can you honestly tell after one game? Or are you kind of like me and need to see more before coming to any real conclusion in that regard? Let me know your thoughts either way in the comments down below. Now, before I get out of here, the question many still have is, will Travis Kelce be ready to go week 2 against the Jags? They're coming off a 31-21 victory over the Colts, the team that is literally the Chiefs' kryptonite and still gives me PTSD, but Trevor Lawrence had a pretty decent day showing chemistry with Calvin Ridley, and they're a team that cannot be slept on or taken lightly, which is why, in my opinion, it would be ideal, if possible, to see Chris Jones back, please, as well as Travis Kelce. Andy Reid actually said today that Kelce is getting better. He's progressing, so they will see how he does the rest of today and tomorrow, and then, quote, "we'll go from there." Now, in case you were wondering, the Chiefs had Kelce run in the pool last week prior to the game, and even underwater without his full body weight, he didn't feel right, so they shut him down. Ari Murov then shared yesterday that the Chiefs were initially concerned that Kelce suffered a season-ending tibia plateau fracture during last Tuesday's practice. However, thank God, it turned out to be just a very deep bone bruise, and Kelce has been making progress every day. And while Andy Reid didn't specify in his presser today, the plan was to have him run today, and as long as there's no swelling, he should be back for week 2 against the Jags. And if he's not back, I am comforted a bit by the fact that the Chiefs have more time to game plan, knowing Kelce may not play and should, in theory, look better out there offensively because of the longer time to prepare. However, if Kelce does not play week 2 and the Chiefs still look as rough as they did out there against the Lions on offense, I will definitely be more concerned than I was after the Lions game when the Chiefs had like a day and a half to prepare without Kelce being in the game. Anyway, that's all I have for today. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?